Okay, here we are talking about Collision from last night, July the 8th, emanating, possibly inseminating or whatever from Regina, Saskatchewan. Could they? I swear to if Troy Graham, the Dream Machine, was here, Brian, he'd be going, buttermilk, buttermilk, it's a buttermilk run. They literally book Punk to be the star of a new Saturday night program, and they put him in Regina, Saskatchewan. What about Oshkosh, Greenland?
Juneau, Alaska.
Juneau, Alaska. Why don't they put him on the island of Antarctica or the continent of Antarctica or whatever?
The island.
The island of Antarctica.
I'm going to the islands this holiday season.
Yes, Antarctica. Well, it could be an island. It's a big island. It's a small continent. Nevertheless, Regina is where they were. And again, I think there's interior forces working against this show. Nevertheless, we know about we've talked about the ticketing issues and that they've blanketed themselves all over Canada over the last several weeks. Well, in this case, I've never been to Regina with the goddamn WWE, all the crazy offbeat places that I've been to. But it apparently was a small, boisterous crowd because it had the feeling to me at the start of kind of like a big TV studio wrestling show, because you could tell there were people excited to be there, but not a lot of them. So they do the pre-tapes at the start, the brief pre-tapes of the guys in the feature matches, which is a good touch, makes it look like a wrestling program, hooks you at the start. Okay, not droning on, but a pithy comment. I want to see what's fucking happening. Then they go into Elton John, and then when they come out, instead of fading from Elton kept playing, and it was no Mussolini, just Reggie Dwight. And here came Punk.
I don't remember Bernie Taupin writing those lyrics.
Well, it was Bernie had a period. Adderall's a hell of a drug. But So it seemed like an okay reception to me as far as whether or not the people disliked Punk in Canada. They chanted CM Punk, CM Punk, and many people cheered. Many people had the shirts on, but there weren't many people. That's the problem. There was nobody there. There was no people, Jenny. But he did a great opening speech, a rah-rah speech, putting over Canada, the Owen Hart tournament, the cup. And he did instead of getting in the ring, he did the promo on the floor in front of the people, where you could see people enjoying it behind him. And obviously nobody trying to sneak up and stick a shiv in his ribs. So that was good. And then he kissed the cup. And, he's a hockey guy. He likes cups. A good intro to the show. And prefaced what we were going to see with the Owen Hart tournament matches. I think that probably Punk coming out and talking probably hooked him better than Starks and Hobbs starting to wrestle right off the top of the program. Your thoughts?
I think he kind of put it over more than anyone else has on their show.
Yeah.
The idea of this tournament and how important Owen Hart is to him, as he put it, and various other people in the locker room. That's the strongest the tournament's been put over. And like you said, not a big crowd, but a good crowd, a hot crowd. And it helped everything. And there was an energy from the moment he came out there. And I've said it before, I'm a big believer. Get Punk out there right away, even if it's only briefly, just to let people know he's not going away. He'll be here at the end of the show.
And they went right from there into a package on Punk and Joe, because now that Tony owns the Ring of Honor library, back to their previous matches, but with modern comments. And again, serious, sports-like presentation. Good job. Both didn't drone on. But it made something out of their previous conflicts. And the fact that it had been 18 years since they've been in a ring together and, in this situation. And Punk has never beaten Joe. It was 3-0. So
Did you think that this match deserved more? Not to take anything away from it, and we'll talk about the match and take away from the tournament, but do you think it deserved more than just a match on the show? Should it have been a pay-per-view match with the kind of build they could do for Joe versus Punk?
No. Because what they're doing, this was part of the build for Joe versus Punk. We haven't seen this match the last time. When we get there, I'll show you what I think. There's a number of ways they can go and things they can do, but Punk and Joe on pay-per-view right now would have gotten interest from all the people who have been dedicated, diehard, hardcore fans and Ring of Honor fans for 20 years or whatever. But presenting this as a way to start hostilities in the current year between Punk and Joe and continue them going can build to a bigger match once we get everybody accustomed to this. Because and again, yes, they did have some good matches in Ring of Honor, but you can't just show 15 minutes of this goddamn Ring of Honor match recorded on VHS 18 years ago on national television. And they don't look like that anymore. Well, Joe does, but nevertheless. Well, Punk doesn't have blonde hair anymore, does he?
Joe looks a little bigger than he used to.
Well, but that's like, so golly, you gained 5 pounds, Happy Humphrey. I mean, no, I'm not calling Joe fat, but he doesn't look appreciably different than he used to.
Compared him to Happy Humphrey. Not even Big Humphrey, but Happy Humphrey.
He was a happy man. Quit it. If you had Harley Race tickling your taint with a garden hose every week, you'd be happy too. So then they went to the Owen Hart tournament match between Ricky Starks and Powerhouse Hobbs. And of course, Hobbs had QT Marshall, Solo, No Comarato, Oragogo, and the miscellaneous white girl with him. And Brian, we've been fans of both these guys. We said that both of them deserved better opportunities and they should have been pushed. And every time that we see them against other people, we feel that way. But is this the second time we have seen Starks versus Hobbs? And tell me what you thought, but do these two just not click?
That is what I think, and I did have the same thought as you. I remember the previous time we saw them, because remember, they were a team. They were, even if not a team, they were associated with Team Taz. And then they broke up, and maybe I'm wrong. Did they go right to a
They had DQ one match that was underwhelming, and a finish came out of nowhere, and blah. And
no, that was the second match, wasn't it? Didn't they go right to a no DQ match, and it was underwhelming, and then they went to a singles match, and it was quick?
Yes, they did.
And then it was
so we went underwhelming, quick, and underwhelming.
And I have to be honest, I like Powerhouse Hobbs, but him having a jobber faction with him drags him down. It doesn't elevate them. It doesn't help him.
Well, they're about to fix that.
Better do it quick. Better not be him getting. It better not be him getting into a feud with them. That's what I'm afraid of.
Was the finish of this not the end of that?
Oh no!
I would have to.
We'll see about that, but keep going.
Well, basically on this match, anybody wants to watch it, they don't click. They just, these two don't click. I don't know what's going on. But they did the best they could. And at one point, like when Starks went for the spinning DDT, he slipped on the ropes. And this is a problem. Starks probably has more experience than Hobbs, I would think, definitely. And Hobbs would have been in control of this. But if they'd had Hobbs in a fucking program and had him in the ring on a regular basis against more experienced foes, he might have learned something by now. When he went for the spinning DDT, Starks did, and slipped on the ropes, all Hobbs had to do was just block it, just stand there on him and stop him and go to pick him up for a suplex or whatever and let Starks drop behind him, turn around, boot him in the gut, grab it, and do it again. Instead, Hobbs, when Starks was still trying to do it, Hobbs was still trying to go with it, and they fell in a fucking heap. And, and then finally the finish. QT tried to trip. Hobbs hit a spine buster and got a cover, but referee Aubried was distracted by QT, and he had a pocket full of oats with him. And so she wouldn't count the cover that she didn't see. So then Hobbs got up and argued with QT. I mean, get down. You're fucking up. And Starks came from behind and hit a tackle, and Hobbs went into QT to the floor. And then Starks hit a spear on Hobbs, 1, 2, 3. So then he got fuck out of there. But then obviously Hobbs was mad at QT, and QT's trying to explain, and Hobbs shoves QT down and then gets into it with Solo and Spinebuster Solo, and the people liked this, and then was going to kill QT, but the girl rolled in and begged him not to do it, and he left. I think he should have given her a bump too, just for the sake of it. But hopefully if he's blown these goofballs off and he's not going to be associated with them anymore, that's fine. But did he turn babyface, or did he just realize that he had excess baggage in his corner? Because now he's been babyface, then heel, then babyface, then heel. And so are they switching him again? Hopefully he'll just be badass powerhouse Hobbs without all of these people in the corner, but he can't work a program with QT or Solo. I think this was just the way maybe somebody's come to their sanity, and finally they've separated them from the individuals.
I mean, clearly they need to get Hobbs away from QT and his crew. Again, the show opened with those Saturday night's main event promos with Hobbs, with QT, and these people with him. They're trying as hard as they can with this blonde woman with the voice, for whatever reason, because she's here with this. She's in the Acclaim stuff. I don't know who's her fan there. I don't know what's going on with that.
And who's she fanning?
And QT's been stuffed onto this show since the very beginning.
Stuffed onto this?
He's been stuffed onto or into this show since the very beginning. And I have very little faith that that's going to go away.
Worked in like the green bean casserole at Thanksgiving dinner.
So that's why I don't have much faith that the Powerhouse Hobbs thing is over, because things linger on, and QT will still want to be his friend or want to be out there with him for this weird undefined relationship that doesn't make much sense. All of a sudden he's managing him, and then Hobbs was at his fake TV show, and then they don't even do that anymore. I don't even know.
I think it got canceled.
But all these people are still hanging out together. I guess they're all unemployed, and they need a thing to do.
No, you know what they're doing? Their TV show got canceled, but they're like Kramer when he found the Merv Griffin show set. They just got it in their living room, and they're just having guests come in and introduce them in their...
And what's more AEW than that? But no, that's the problem. I think they're going to keep going with this somehow, because all of a sudden Solo's out there. This guy hasn't been involved in any of this shit. All of a sudden he's out there. So
and do you think they need to change his name now that there's a more prominent Solo? It was like in music, was there like allowed to be a jobber share?
No, there was only one share. There was no other share.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. Solo's taken now, bud. Anyway, Miro did a pre-tape. Apparently he has won the showdown with God and nobody can hurt him now. You know, I don't really know what the fuck he's saying, but in short bursts, it sounds good when he says it.
It's almost like he said something and then they translated it and he's reading the translation as opposed to whatever he meant to say. No, he's going look, this guy has something in his head he's been trying to get out there in these promos.
I got a song and I want to sing it.
Even before his hiatus, remember he was in like a bright room, like arguing with God, and now he's upset with God. We don't know why exactly. None of this.
Can we get a preacher out to explain, like when they, in The Exorcist, when they call the specialist in to explain, well, here's what has to be done. Can we get somebody to explain this battle that he's had with God and what the rules were and the parameters and who won and how?
And also, he's not like sitting in his room saying it. It's like, I have a problem with God. Get me a soundstage. Like, where is this little set he's on? I think it'd be more effective just having him out there every week kicking the shit out of someone, but they are in Canada.
That's a good point.
Maybe he didn't want to come back a second week. I don't know.
So then Julia Hart wrestled, was her name Bambi? Bambi Hope, Bambi Hall, Bambi Hole, Bambi something.
It wasn't Bambi Hole. I know.
I thought I heard Hope, and I thought I heard Hall, and I was trying to combine. Was Julia using a Stevie Nicks song for her entrance music? Because it was some entrance music of a woman singing. And she looks like Stevie Nicks, so and Tony pays money.
She doesn't look like Stevie Nicks. She dresses somewhat similar to Stevie Nicks at a certain point.
Well, but boy, howdy, she's got it down.
But what do you think about her doing that? Because, I mean, that's kind of the Scarlett thing of you have the song where you're singing it and you come to the ring and you're
is she singing her own song?
Oh, I don't know. You know, probably not. I'm just assuming because she was lip syncing it like she was. It wasn't Stevie Nicks.
I lip sync every time I hear Stevie Nicks sing.
You do?
Of course, doesn't everybody?
No.
'Cause I've been afraid of changes 'cause I built my
That's
life.
the song you go to? That's your go-to Stevie Nicks song?
Well, it's beautiful. It's purty. She's a little songbird.
Oh, my God.
But hey, you know what? They were in Canada. Maybe it was Anne Murray singing the song for Julia Hart. The House of Black is with you where you go and lead you. I don't know the words to Songbird all that well. Spread your tiny wings and fly away. I know that one. All right.
Cover my ears with my tiny wings.
So and then fill your mouth up with your tiny balls. So I don't know if Julia is Mildred Burke, but next to Bambi, she was. She looked like Piper Niven's poorer sister. And Julia won this one fairly easily. And any further comments?
I mean, there's not much to say. The fans are into Julia. It was quick. She did nothing wrong. You know,
First, do no harm.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing much to add here. I mean, the fans are into the fact that fans are reacting to her. She may be the most over member of the House of Black.
Well, again, that's like being the nicest guy in prison, but we'll go with it. It's a compliment.
Depends what prison.
That's true.
Minimum security or max?
Yeah, there you go.
See?
The country club type of thing.
Yeah.
There could be a few fine folks in there.
I hear it's very nice.
Yeah. Well, maybe why don't you go and check it out and let me know. I'll wait for you to report back before I go. So Malachi Black and Andrade are upset at each other because Malachi Black. Now let's see. Malachi, he has the face paint, but he has stolen, and he has a mask that he uses in his interviews, but Andrade has a mask that he wears out to the ring and then takes it off, but they have stolen that mask that Andrade takes off. And they did a promo back and forth about this thing, and Andrade, he talked as slowly and clearly as he ever has, and it sounded better, but it took quite a while. It was almost like you were playing the tape on 1/2 speed. It sounded like Andre on Soma's.
I'm not going to say anything bad about him. He was trying hard and I actually thought he was effective here because he's upset about something and he's showing that. The problem is what he's upset about. Whatever this spooky Malachi Black, again, I need a cameraman. Like, where are they that he's in a chair sitting sideways away from the camera dramatically while he talks about this nonsensical feud? Again, another one of these, I want you to be better than you are for unknown reasons.
I don't know. Yeah, I always want my opponents to be tougher than they normally are when they fight me.
Malachi Black has a look. Malachi Black is athletic. We've seen him look impressive in the ring. Malachi Black should not have anything to do with his own creative ever. Ever. Ever.
There you go.
Because it's
I think
bad.
that's the problem.
Yeah.
And Andrade, I kid him, but he did a good job here because he did try to talk legibly, and he explained the mask and its importance to his family to blah, blah, blah. Of course, what we're doing here is we're explaining it's a heist movie, and we're explaining the value of what was stolen after it was stolen instead of beforehand to set it up why people would want to steal it.
And the other guy's argument is like, I stole your mask so you can discover who you are. Like, what? Why? What is that? I want to kick your ass. You're in my way. If I move up the ladder, I make money. If I make money and get the belt, I'll have more money. And then I can do whatever I want to work a Roman Reigns schedule. That works. Not, I want you to discover who you are, so I'll do that by stealing your ancient mask. Save it.
But anyway, that was a brief Little back and forth there, because now we get to talk about what made the whole show worthwhile. And there were good things, other things that we'll talk about, but this was worth the price of admission alone, as they used to say. FTR and Gin and Juice. And now we know the Eliminator match. Thank God there are actual announcers on this program that kind of explained it better than we have heard so far.
It's an eliminator match. They get eliminated, and if they don't get eliminated, they get another match, and if that match wins, they don't get eliminated, they get eliminated. Something like that?
Yeah, no, fortunately, instead of a fucking idiot fake person with a sock on his face, we have actual human beings with real faces doing the announcing. So the Eliminator match, if they win the challengers here, then they get a title match. But if they don't win, if they get beat, then they can never have a title match against these champions. That's what it is. So that makes a little more sense. Okay. A tag team match with talent. And I mean, from the start of this thing, the lockup and the struggle in the corner, you can see that it's a level above most of the other people in the company. And finally, we see now that Jay White and Juice Robinson, they can work. They've just, we remember I said, I'd like to see this guy impress me. Well, now he has, because he finally had a fucking opponent. Juice, we've been impressed with. But they also, I'm not going to go blow by blow on this tag team match, because especially as it headed down the stretch, you couldn't keep up with it or describe it. But the flavor of it was, they had a modern style tag match in terms of the pace and the action, but no furniture, no dives. They actually tagged most of the time. They didn't bury the referee unnecessarily. They not only did wrestling spots, but they worked in between the spots with the heels backing off and begging off, or the baby faces being aggressive or working the people. And they paced this thing so that they had momentum-changing moments at the break spots, but not just the requisite, somebody's going to do a dive out of the ring and the announcer is going to say, "What will happen?" Bleh. They actually pitch to the breaks. They acknowledge that things are going on. And so after the first segment of this, they allowed them to go 5 minutes to get you set into it. They set the hook. You're a little bit involved in it now. And then FTR do the classic tag team do-si-do and hit double Germans. Instead of a do-si-do and then punches or ass bumps, they modified it, modernized it to Germans. The place blew. They loved that. And they went to a break. And when they come back, they're getting heat on Dax, and Dax is taking the Bret Hart buckles. But he's firing back, and then he tags Cash. And again, Gin and Juice were working like heels. And Juice hit Cash with a hot shot that he went straight over the top rope, which looked fucking excellent. And then they got some heat on Cash. And it was a long, good, old school, regular set of heat on Cash, where the heels did quick tags in and out, and the babyface tried to fight to the corner. And finally, he got to the corner, but Dax was busy with Juice. And Dax got nailed off the apron, and then Cash fought both heels, but got backdropped over the top rope, and they went to the break again, but after 9 more minutes of action. So once again, we're fucking reasonably hooked, and this thing is cooking. And then they come back. And now Cash and Juice are both down, and Juice tags fucking Jay, and Jay charges, and Cash moves and dives for a hot tag. We actually saw one. And Dax makes a big comeback, and they start with their false finishes and 2 counts. And the people are holy shit chanting. And then they went through an incredible sequence of events that I can't, again, begin to detail. At 100 miles an hour, nailing everything. The crowd was going batshit because they were going back and forth. They were taking them on a roller coaster ride. They got a "This is awesome" chant. Nigel and Kevin Kelly were tremendous on the call. They did some incredible false finishes that you could buy every time. And did you see Dax knock the slobber out of Jay White with a power bomb and then hit him with that uppercut forearm and knocked the glob of slobber into his hair? And I was like, what the? This was a slobber knocker. And then Dax and Jay White went through the yay boo forearm and chop exchange back and forth, not standing there like Strong style.
That to me was the biggest mistake in the match. That had no place in my eyes being there. And that was a ridiculous place to put that spot.
They were trying to fight, though. They weren't standing there and pointing to their chest and going, go on, hit me. They were swinging back and forth. Still, I know it's overdone, but
it's ubiquitous now. Yeah, no,
it's ubiquitous. That is a good word. It's also prevalent.
Too prevalent.
Over-prevalent.
And ubiquitous.
Hyper-prevalent.
That's right.
But nevertheless.
That's the next NXT star. Hyper-prevalent.
Hyper-prevalent. So Dax then rolls Jay up, but Juice pulls him off and hits his inverted DDT finish 1, 2, 3. And there was another 9-minute segment. 23 minutes of the match were on the air, and it was 29 minutes bell to bell. Not one dive. Not one piece of furniture. I don't remember them ever fighting on the floor. They took bumps to the floor, but I don't remember fights out there. So what I want to know is with all those, again, if Uncle Dave is given 5 stars to the plumber for these multiple man bullshit matches where he's unprofessional, looks like shit, his work is see-through and phony, he cuts himself on camera, and they use every fucking piece of furniture in the building, bury the referee countless times, and can't use the ring because they're in the floor or the bleachers. If that gets 5 stars, then what? When you have 4 athletes that look like wrestlers, that know what they're doing, that have talent, that scorch the fucking ring with an incredible display of tag team wrestling involving no furniture, no dives, no gymnastics, no burying the referee, no fighting in the crowd, and no on-camera blade jobs. How does that not get 5 stars? What do you think it'll get, Brian?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, we'll talk about Dave's rating system on the drive-thru this week, but he says that people should be happy with just 4 3/4 stars. It's the same thing as 5 stars, except it's not. But we'll talk more about that in the future. This was an excellent match.
But in all seriousness, you know, when people see something like this with people who are good at what they do showing it, how can you compare that to this amateur class bullshit that we are fed by the other fucking side of this thing?
There are people who like the gymnastics aspect of wrestling more than they like the physical wrestling part of wrestling. They just may not
well, I don't
it.
see the plumber doing any gymnastics either, but he does everything else.
But this was an excellent match. And the other thing is it went long and it didn't feel like it.
Yeah.
You were caught up in it. And part of the reason is the commentary. And that's a big thing. You want to talk about a match, something that elevates a match from being 4.5 stars to 5 stars. Let's talk about the commentary here. Nigel is really good, although to me, sometimes he feels like he's unnaturally being a heel. He's better just being a heelish color guy.
Yeah.
Kevin Kelly, I said it before, I'll say it again. He's doing the best work of his career. And when you look at the landscape and every other commentator out there today, not to take anything away from Ian Riccaboni and Caprice Coleman, but Kevin Kelly calling this match and these guys working this kind of match made it feel like you were watching sports-based wrestling. And it, to me, and this rarely happens, it held me better through the commercial breaks. I guess knowing that the voice coming back was going to just be explaining things, this kind of match, this kind of action, I don't know when it's going to end, how it's going to end, what's going to happen. I don't want to miss anything. I thought it was great. Went a long time. The fans were into it. Again, the only thing to me that brought the fans down was the yay, boo, whatever you want to call it, the spot at the end of the match where Dax and Jay White are just standing there and they slowed it down. And to me, it didn't look right. It didn't feel right. And it also brought the fans down a little bit. Other than that, excellent match, even with a little sloppiness at the beginning. It felt like these guys are all just learning to work with each other, I guess. Excellent match. And between the match, the action, the commentary, this is the tone a lot of us want from this Saturday night show. And I had a really good night because I had this show and then the last Mets late night game because they were in San Diego at 10:10. But it felt like a good transition. I felt like I was watching a sports show and then I'm going to go watch baseball. And not every time I watch wrestling can I just, it doesn't feel like a good fit right into the next thing.
We are able to actually start looking forward to, rather than dreading, like I do every Thursday morning when I say, okay, I'll get this out of the way. I'll watch Dynamite from last night and I'll fast forward through all the bullshit. This is not a chore. I still can't stay up till 10 o'clock on Saturday night most of the time, but it's not something I look unforward to, that I look to with displeasure on Sunday morning watching Collision. Because I know every show has had a good, the first show had the great match. Second week had a really good match. Last week was a little odd, but still had a good match. And then this was incredible. And it's always usually involving FTR, Punk, or both. But again, FTR, let's just call a spade. They've had the best six-man tag match ever on AEW television. They've had the best tag team matches ever on AEW television. And they're the AEW talent that's had the best tag matches of all time in other companies with the Briscoes last year. So just put them on every week and we'll see what happens.
But here's the problem. And someone actually put this in the Cult of Cornette Facebook group, and it follows up on something I said when we recorded yesterday, the other part of the show. Chris Waite in the Cult of Cornette Facebook group, since winning the AEW tag belts on April 5th, FTR have had 2 tag matches and they lost 1. That's the problem. Why aren't these guys, instead of a blind eliminator tournament, I just want tag title matches. That's it.
Well, that's what we're going to get next week because they challenged, Jay and Juice challenged FTR to 2 out of 3 falls next week. And I can't wait to see that and hope it goes longer than this one did.
What do you do with that? Do you start the show with it?
Well, I don't know what else they've got or what else they're planning, etc. So if, but after this week, it's a great match.
If this went a half hour, I mean, you got to think there's no way 2 out of 3 falls is going to go less than that.
No, that's why I'm saying I hope it goes longer. But I don't know whether you start with that or do you start with, because again, there's going to be the finals are next week of the tournament. Well, we're going to get to the finals of the Owen tournament in a second of what I think that may be done or possible things that could be done. Scorpio Sky and Action Andretti. Action Andretti, after the star-making win over Chris Jericho, was presented already in the ring with no entrance, and Scorpio Sky came back and got a good win in a short match with a break in it and hit him with his finish 1, 2, 3. So, and I'm not saying they shouldn't. I don't know if I would have put a break in a match that short. But Scorpio Sky, if they're going to use him and he's a good worker, needs wins, and Action Andretti, as we predicted when it happened, has been completely forgotten about. It's not ready for prime time. Your thoughts?
Again, when you think back to the timing of it, it was also interesting where, Chris Jericho coming out of All Out was getting a lot of criticism from a lot of places, especially here on this show, correct criticism.
Mm-hmm.
And responded with the Colt, being one of the people that got Colt Cabana on AEW TV. And then he was going to prove a lot of people wrong by making someone. You guys say I don't make anyone. I just leech off these young guys. Watch this. You've never even heard of Action Andretti before. And we haven't seen him since. And like you said, not even an entrance. He's just in the ring. He beat Chris Jericho on Wednesday night. What was the follow-up? Everyone wants to defend the booking of either AEW or specifically the Chris Jericho segments. What was the follow-up? Was it worth it? Did it make sense? Was it a bad idea at the time that that some people didn't want to point out, but other people did, and now it's apparent that it was a bad idea. Nothing against Action Andretti. He was a pawn in this whole Jericho game.
I swear to God, I was about to say he was a pawn in the game. That's exactly way. And he probably thought he was in for a big push and superstardom, and he was just so Jericho could show, yeah, remember Hulk Hogan did a job for Billy Kidman or something?
But then Kidman kept, people said, like, oh, it didn't really help Kidman. Yeah, but he kept getting used on TV.
Yeah.
In that way, it helped him, or whoever it was. I think that's the example you're talking about. Or no, it was it Kevin Nash or Scott Hall put over Rey Mysterio? It was one of those matches. But they were still used and they were still stars. Actually, Andretti, he's been on Dark and Dark's been canceled.
Oh, no, it's not been canceled. They just decided to make it darker. All righty, we get to the main event, and this is the one that they sold the program on, obviously. Samoa Joe and CM Punk for the Owen Hart tournament semifinal. And somebody told me on Twitter that I was not crazy, that the initial bracket that I saw, I thought it looked like it would be Joe and Punk in the finals. And it's not, but somebody said that the original bracket they saw was the same thing and somehow it was changed. And I don't know for whether that's true or not, but I would love clarification just so I know if I have a brain tumor. But nevertheless, this was the main event. Joe comes out and then, like Mussolini in the wilds of Canada. And, you know, they had to follow, basically, I know Scorpio Sky was right there, but they had to follow the match, FTR and Gin and Juice, and nobody could follow that match, but it was a completely different kind of match between Joe and Punk in that they had the people. The people wanted to see it. It was over. They were in no hurry. They didn't open up 100 miles an hour and have nowhere to go for 20 minutes. They did the stare down. They did the feeling out because it had the big fight feel. And the story they were telling earlier was Punk was evading Joe's chops, right? He'd always duck it or get out of the way or whatever. But then Joe did the deal where he walks off on the crossbody and Punk crashed. And then Joe started landing the chops and Punk would sell them big. And then the jabs, and Punk could fight from underneath because he's the smaller guy. Joe's the big bully. He's on top. He's a good heel. He taunts the fans. He has the facial expressions, so we're having a wrestling match again. Imagine that, two on the same show. And then they took a break, but when they came back, Punk started fighting back. Both of them were tired and selling. Punk, his mouth was bleeding. I don't believe he bladed his tongue, so I don't think he's got Moxley's disease, but they were landing some shots. And then Joe gets the sleeper, rear naked choke, whatever. Punk gets a belly to back. Boom. Then they go back and forth. And Punk with a series of knees in the corner and a clothesline. The elbow off the top and gets a 2 count. And then again, they go back and forth. Punk goes for the GTS. And Joe gets the crossface. Punk gets the ropes. Joe hits that quick power slam, gets a 2 count. And then because the precondition with Punk earlier at the top of the show, the people are chanting Owen Hart, which is great to hear. And then finally, they're more back and forth. Joe went for the sleeper. Punk dropped out, reached his legs up, hooked Joe, rolled him up, 1, 2, 3. And so Punk advances. And both of them were still selling the result and then recovering. And then they milked it and stared at each other. And then Joe comes out and offers his hand. And Punk looks at him and takes it, and they shake, and the people cheer. And then Joe snatches him into the sleeper. And did you see, as soon as they went down, the bell started ringing to give it some sense of urgency. And the referee was in there, and Kevin Kelly sounds like Lance Russell. Oh, come on! And he snatched a sleeper out of a handshake, and it sounded and looked like a dirty goddamn deal. And Joe puts Punk out, and then rolls out and gets a chair, but before he can do damage, here comes FTR. And then the last day of Starks comes out to survey what's going on. And they had a good match, but that's why I was saying to me, this is build for an eventual bigger Punk and Joe match. Because now Punk and Starks is the final. Well, that's right now the way it's presented, two baby faces. But will Joe cost Punk the win of the cup out of heat over this without Starks knowing, so that Starks is still nominally a babyface? And then could Starks get mad at Joe and say, well, goddamn, I want to fight you, Samoa Joe. You tarnished my win. And then Punk make it cost Joe a match with Ricky Starks. Starks gets a win over Joe. But it's because of there's things you can do out of all of this to eventually want Punk and Joe to collide again in a bigger match on a bigger stage. We'll see what happens.
Let's talk about, and by the way, great match, great commentary, great match. I'm happy that we're going to hopefully see more from these two. Ricky Starks, though. So he comes out there at the end. You're not really mentioning him, and, we're talking more about the future of Punk versus Joe. What do you do with Starks? He's now one of the baby faces on that show. If Powerhouse Hobbs turns, he's a baby face. I don't know what Scorpio Sky is officially. I guess maybe a heel. But Ricky Starks versus Punk, who would you have go over to win the tournament? And secondly, any consideration you think should be put into a Ricky Starks heel turn? Have they ridden the wave of him as a babyface, especially if he's not going to be a top babyface, as far as they can?
Possibly, because they keep ruining their own waves. In a one-on-one match, fairly and squarely, Punk has to beat Starks. In a one-on-one match, if Starks was to turn heel and fuck Punk, I think it's early or misplaced for that. In a one-on-one match, if Joe causes Punk to lose to Starks, whether Starks knows about it and turns heel or doesn't know and remains a babyface, that works for me. That's the thing. I think if Punk wins this, there could be some backlash from some segments that have already been preconditioned. Well, now he has to come in and win the Owen Cup, and Owen wouldn't have liked him. Well, he would have, but Owen wouldn't have liked him. Whatever. And Punk doesn't need the Owen Cup. But Punk could certainly get a good program out of the guy that fucks him out of it. But right now, Starks is, I know you want to elevate Starks, but I don't think he's ready there unless it's a TV match thing, but Punk would have to win. Punk would have to win, and it couldn't be a long program. So I'm pretty sure with the heads involved in this Saturday night program, there's something that's probably going to make sense, but that we're not thinking about, or is going to be in some element of the parameters I just talked about, that's going to happen rather than Punk just winning the thing and being carried out of the ring on somebody's shoulders, possibly.
In terms of what he's been saying in the promos or anything, now we saw him injure Roderick Strong, even though Roddy's more part of the Adam Cole MJF canon. And now this with CM Punk seemingly leading to bigger things. What is Samoa Joe's motivation?
Well, again, if everybody that has gotten to this point had proper build from the start, Joe always works best when he's presented as just the Samoan submission machine and the fucking badass that doesn't put up with bullshit and bullies people and uses his size. And he could be a dominant heel on a champion of some description and on any program. So hopefully he's going to stay in the top singles mix on Collision. I don't care what he does on Wednesday nights. And, again, with Punk as firmly the top babyface and Joe definitely at or near the top of the heel list on this program, that's why I say their paths are going to collide, no pun intended, again. And Joe's motivation is just he's got to want to win and to beat as many people as he can beat. And it would help if there was a good babyface secondary champion in this company, but there's MJF is the champion, and everybody else in the company has a fucking belt. And I know Joe's got the Ring of Honor TV title. Ring of Honor doesn't have television. So that tends to compromise that somewhat. I would, if I were operating this fucking vehicle, I would have Joe as the not secondary, I hate to term it that way, but the United States champion or the Intercontinental champion on this program exclusively. That's what I'd do if I were me, because we still got to get back to Punk and MJF, but that's going to take a while.
Yeah, and the other problem, like you said, is everyone has a belt. Even people who aren't even wrestlers here show up with other belts.
So that diminishes everything, but...
It happened on this show with Willow Nightingale and Athena.
Oh, I forgot about that. I was petting Harley's belly.
They're talking about Willow losing, was it the IWGP Women's title? She just lost that in Japan to Julia. So they're talking about this other title loss, which I don't know if it had been referenced before on the show. And then Athena walks in with another belt because she's not the AEW Women's Champion. Was she Ring of Honor Women's Champion? Again, there's just too many champions on these shows.
But overall, excellent program. We have no ratings. It's the weekend, but we will update that, I guess, on the drive-thru this week, which hopefully, I feel like our podcasts now are like Jim Crockett Promotions early pay-per-views. Hopefully, we're going to have full coverage this week.
I think we will have full penetration of the marketplace by the end of this week.
Well, and the marketplace better be ready for that, too, because they're going to get penetrated like they've never been penetrated before.
But with protection.
Do we have protection on this new processor?
We've got lots
server?
We've got lots of protection now, yes.
Are we protected now? Very good. Somebody else better be protected when we get finished telling this story. Anyway, closing thoughts on again, one of the better wrestling programs that AEW has ever produced. They've had 4 of these now, and 3 of them have been pretty doggone good overall.
I think the big takeaways from Collision are the tone of the matches, the length of the main event matches, and the commentary. And it creates a different feeling and a different vibe from Dynamite. I look forward to seeing what this show could be when it's in the States. Nothing against our Canadian friends, but when it's in hot wrestling cities here in the States.
Well, when it's in any city with a larger crowd. And because the early tapings have been, snake bit with their promotional methods.
Yeah. Now, again, this is a Saturday night show, so you're going to run into a lot of issues with other companies' pay-per-view events and preemptions. That's the only thing that scares me about the future of the show. But we'll see how everything else works out.